In today's video, I'm going to show you how to paint this simple wildflower with a cute bee with watercolor on your iPad. Hello and welcome to Color with Kendi. On this channel, we paint digital watercolor and gouache on the iPad, and I use the app Procreate. Most of my tutorials are step-by-step tutorials and are meant to be followed along, and I have a list of all the supplies that I'm using today in the description as well as the pinned comment. For today's painting, I'm using the Amazing Watercolor brush pack, and I'm using the medium-sized canvas, texture number 2, that comes with the set. This is a slightly less bumpy texture than the first one. So what we're going to do, the first thing is we are going to import the traceable into this canvas. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just turn off this layer that has all of the brush textures. I'm going to tap on the very top group and I'm going to import the traceable at the top. So to import a traceable, all you have to do is tap on the Actions menu and insert a photo or insert a file depending on where you saved it. I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to tap right there. So we have the traceable. We're not using a liner. We're just going to use this as a guide, and there's a color palette at the top. Feel free to use that or use any colors of your choice. So now I'm going to transfer over all of the colors to the color menu. So I'm just going to tap on the color menu. I already have a color palette here. I'm just going to add the colors right here. You can create a new palette as well. So to grab the colors, all you have to do is press and hold with your finger. That will grab the color. That's the color picker function, and just tap. And I'm going to do that with the rest of the colors. Okay, so I've transferred over all of the colors. Now the next step is to reduce the opacity of this traceable because we're going to use it as a guide and we're not going to be using a line art. So just go to the layer, tap on N, and then reduce the opacity. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the paint here layer, and we are going to start off by painting in all of the floral elements. I'm going to select the color. This is this color right here. It's just kind of in between orange and red. And then I'm going to go to the brush library and select brush number 16 in the Amazing Watercolor brush pack. This is Tapered Watercolor B. So I'm just going to show you how this brush works. So it is a tapered brush, which means it can have a very sharp end like that. But in order to get that, you have to start off with heavier pressure and then release the pressure as you lift off of the screen. Because if you didn't release the pressure and use the same amount of pressure throughout, you would not get that taper. And as you can see, this brush has an inherent watercolor texture in it. Now, the thing to keep in mind is with most watercolor brushes in Procreate, if you lay down some pigment, lift your pencil, and lay down more pigment, you will get some of that overlap. So my suggestion is either smudge the overlap if you don't want it, or try to avoid the overlap in the first place. So now we're going to start painting in all of the flowers, and we're going to be very loose about it. We're not trying to paint like this. So there's one way of painting in where you're painting in the shape and you're not lifting your pencil. That's not what we're doing today. We're trying to keep this a little bit more loose. So let me show you. So for this one, what I would do is just create a few strokes like this, kind of like what you would do if you were using traditional paint, and very loose. So I'm going to do the same thing with all of the floral elements. I'm trying to avoid a little bit of overlap, but I'm being very loose about it and not trying to color in all of the elements as is. I'm trying to keep each petal somewhat different. You can add more, but I'm happy with this. So we have finished the florals, and there are some elements that have slight overlaps, but you know what, I kind of like that, so I'm not going to smudge it out. But if you do want to smudge out the overlap, you can use the smudger that comes with the set. That is brush number 6, and try to use it at the smaller size first and then work your way up. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to paint in all of the green sections. So we're going to paint in the stems as well as the leaves. So let's do that in another layer. So I'm going to do this in a different layer. I'm going to go to the color picker and color menu and pick this lighter green that we had. And I'm using the same brush. You can use a different brush. The other brush that I would suggest is brush number 15. It has a slightly different texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by maybe going down a little bit in size, so have a little bit more control. And I'm trying to avoid overlapping too much because I don't want too much of that overlap that I need to smudge out. So I'm just going to color in. I'm not trying to be perfect here. And for thinner stems like this, I like to start at the top and then work my way down and then release the pressure. So remember we talked about when you release the pressure, you can get a slight taper. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to go down to size 1. I find that that gives me a lot more control with the smaller stems. So I'm going to continue to do the stems now, and I'm not trying to be perfect with them. Now my suggestion is if you are having a little bit of trouble controlling this brush, then you can always paint with the detail brushes because those are meant to be used at a smaller size. Some brushes it's a bit hard to get the texture and get the brush to a smaller size. It just doesn't work that well. So in that case, when you need to get really small, use the detail brushes. Okay, so I think I am happy with that. And now the next step is to add a little bit more color variation to that green that we just laid down. So I'm just going to turn off the traceable for now because we don't really need to see it. Now there is a little bit of overlap here and there. If you want to smudge it out, but you don't have to. I might smudge it out just a little bit. I'm going to go down to really small size and just some gentle smudging here and there. Okay, so what I want to do is with the clipping mask, I'm going to add a little bit more color variation to all of the green that we've laid down. So I'm going to do this by going into another layer. So tap on plus and then make it a clipping mask so that whatever we do in this layer is only going to show up on the painted portion underneath. So what I'm going to do now is go to this darker green and I'm going to go to brush 33 hard edge overlay. Let's have a look. Yeah, so this works well. So let me explain how this brush works by doing it in another layer. So with light pressure, that's what the brush will look like. As you increase the pressure, you will get these harder edges. And what you can do is if you don't release the pressure or you don't move the pencil off the screen, you can start to erase away certain areas. So you can get areas that are a little bit darker and areas that are a little bit lighter. And this works really well in a clipping mask layer. So I'm going to go back to that clipping mask layer and I'm going to start to add hints of darkness kind of underneath the leaves. So you can imagine the lights hitting the leaves from the top. So I'm going to add a little bit. So it just adds this nice color variation. You can definitely use another color if you'd like, but I'm happy with that. You can keep on adding more and more pigment with these overlay brushes. These are meant to be used in the clipping mask layer, but I'm happy with this. I'm not going to add any more. What I do want to do at this point now is to start to add a little bit of detail to this painting. So I'm going to do this in a completely different layer, and then I'm going to go to detail brush number 37, which is basic detail. And let me show you how this brush works first. So I'm just going to select this color that we had here. This was a dark color, but not quite black. So with this brush, if you change up the pressure, you can change the thickness, and it does have this kind of painted edge. It's not a completely defined edge. And if you use your pencil by tilting it, you get something like that. So you can get interesting strokes with this, and I like to play around with thin and thick lines. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do all my details in one layer. You could do each color detail in a different layer. So I'm just going to go in and add a little bit of detail to the center of these florals. So it's just strokes like this. Okay, so that's done. Now, if you want, you can add a little bit of yellow to the centers too. So we have this color here. I feel like this might end up being a little bit too dark. So let's have a look. Yeah, you can't really see it. So when you can't see a color, just go a little bit lighter or darker and then see how it works. Yeah, I kind of like that. I'm just gonna add a little bit here and there just for some visual interest. Now we're going to add the details to the rest of the painting. So we're going to do that for the stems and leaves. So I'm going to go in and select this color right here and then add a few lines here. And I'm also going to add a little hint of a line, like a broken line right here. We can add some lines to the flowers. Totally up to you. You don't have to. Now let's move on to the bee. So we're going to do the bee in a separate layer. So we had this layer here with all of the lines. I'm going to add another layer on top of that. And let's bring back our traceable and let's zoom into that little bee. This is totally optional, but I just think it makes the painting a little bit more fun. So I am going to go in and with this color right here, I'm going to, with the same brush, brush 37, just start to paint in the bee with simple strokes like that. Then I'm going to go in with that darker color that we had, almost black, paint in the head, and a little bit more of these stripes. And what I'm going to do is I want to smudge it just a little bit. Totally up to you if you want to do this or not. So I'm going to go to the smudger and I'm going to go to size number 1. Just some gentle smudging. Gentle. Okay, maybe a little bit here. There we go. And then with this color right here, it's like a gray, like a very pale gray with the same brush. I'm just going to go in and create the wings. And I'm using a slight, what's it called? Tilt. And there we go. I think we're done. If you want to add more details, you definitely can. I think maybe adding a few more lines to the floral would be nice. You can also, there's one more thing that you could do if you wanted to. I'm going to go to the layers panel and we're going to add a little bit more color variation to the florals. So remember we had the florals in that first layer. Go to that layer, make sure that it's selected blue, tap on plus, make it a clipping mask. And then what you can do is you can select that color and just vary the hue just a notch. I'm going to vary the hue just a little bit, not too much. And then you can go in with the pigment bleed overlay brush, brush number 32. And this provides a little bit of pigment that's like bleeding outwards. And let's just test it out here. Can't really see the color that much. So what I'm going to do is change the hue a little bit more and go down a little bit. Now let's see. Yeah, very subtle. I am happy with that, but you can definitely add more color if you'd like. So that's it. That's today's simple painting. I hope this video was useful and you learned something new. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.